The IDF and the Israelis in the last week have even claimed that they've been moved towards the Rafah crossing, as well as some Hamas leadership. But they described the tunnel network under Khan Yunis as similar to the London Underground, that it's expansive, it has many passageways, it connects in a spider web-like fashion. So it's very difficult for them, they say, to be able to reach and penetrate deep inside the tunnels.
The US is stepping up its efforts to secure the release of more than 100 hostages held in Gaza. President Biden has sent the CIA Director Bill Burns to Europe for multi-party talks aimed at working towards an agreement. He's meeting Israeli and Egyptian intelligence chiefs and the Qatari Prime Minister. But discussions so far have been volatile and hurdles remain in coming to a deal that all sides can agree on. Let's speak to the Israeli-based journalist Zach Anders in what has become known as Hostages Square in Tel Aviv. Morning to you, Zach.
Hi, good morning.
Before we talk about where you are and the latest on the hostages, just bring us right up to date with the military operations within Gaza and also the conditions for civilians living in the territory.
I can start by telling you that actually the weather here has, in the last week, been absolutely awful. The wind has been coming off the Mediterranean at terrific speeds, a lot of rain coming down, localized flooding. And so this is what the people inside Gaza have been dealing with without shelter. And it's cold. And we've been seeing that. They've been reporting that on their own social media about how terrible the situations are there now. The ground forces around Gaza have sustained heavy losses in the last week, but also made great gains. And the fighting has shown to be street to street in at least southern Gaza. The IDF has achieved some milestones with their ability to control most of Gaza City in the north. Now they're reaching that same goal closely in Khan Yunis, almost completely controlling the city, leaving just really two areas left where Hamas would be able to operate without the heavy IDF presence, which is the Rafah crossing and this humanitarian corridor that's set up on the Mediterranean, which by all indications the IDF is moving into a position to be able to engage Hamas in both areas.
What do we know about the Israeli hostages? Because there are still over 100 being held. Is there a sense of any new information on their whereabouts or indeed their well-being?
No, it's a desperate situation there. It's 136 hostages, but it's believed that many of those are dead, that their bodies that they're trying to repatriate. There was, in the last week, a heavy push to be able to get medicine and supplies directly to them. And the Israeli government essentially had to tell the public that we have no way of knowing if this medicine that we've pushed through the crossing is going to find its way to the hostages. In the first hostage deal, it was widely believed that many of them were being held in Khan Yunis and that they were inside that tunnel network there because the IDF at that point was only in Gaza City. They hadn't started a major siege of Khan Yunis yet in the south. Now that they have, and they control at least half of the city, and they are inside the tunnel network.
Now that would suggest that Zach's line
Is viewing this as a very difficult situation, and they're blaming.
Zach, we are losing the line to you. You're kind of coming in and out. So we're going to try and reconnect to you so that we can get you back, because I think it's really important to hear about that. Because, of course, one of the big things within Israel and the conversations are, yes, this offensive is ongoing. Yes, of course, we want to have Hamas at the very least unable to attack us once again as they did on October the 7th. But still many people, particularly the hostage families, very angry. The fact that these over 136, Zach telling us they're hostages, there's still no confirmation how many of them are alive. And as Zach was saying, we were told very much in the early days of the offensive that they were being held underground. They were being moved around. And I guess one of the interesting things to try and get to the bottom of now is whether there is a view that they are still being moved around. Zach, thank you for your patience. Your line just dropped off there for a moment. You were talking to us about the hostages. I mean, the tunnel network in itself is quite interesting. We know there's an extensive tunnel network under Gaza. And there was suggestions by the IDF at the beginning of the offensive in Gaza that the hostages were being moved around in the tunnels. Is that the sense that they're still being moved around the territory now?
And I'm having a little trouble with the connection again. I apologize. But if you can hear me, yes, that is still the major concern, that they've been moved to locations. In fact, the IDF and the Israelis in the last week have even claimed that they've been moved towards the Rafah crossing, as well as some Hamas leadership. But they described the tunnel network under Khan Yunis as similar to the London Underground, that it's expansive, it has many passageways, it connects in a spider web-like fashion. So it's very difficult for them, they say, to be able to reach and penetrate deep inside the tunnels.
What do we know about the ongoing negotiations behind the scenes? I mean, I said at the beginning of this, Qatar, Egypt involved, also the US involved in trying to come to some kind of deal. Do we get any sense that that is edging closer?
You can look at it two ways. If the US is sending
Gosh, I think we have lost Zach. As frustrating as that is, I think we have lost Zach's line there, speaking to us live from Hostages Square. You remember from previous conversations we've had with Zach, there was a table laid out in Hostages Square with a chair for every single one of those hostages still being held. And obviously deep frustration for many of the hostages' families, because as Zach says, we just simply don't know how many of those 136 are still alive.